Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Hi everyone.
Hello everybody, and welcome today to a very special hour at the Amani's Children's Home. My name is Kim Parley, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I've been a long-time supporter of Amani. I'm excited to have this conversation. When I'm not here, I'm Vice President TD Wealth and also host of Money Talk on BNN Bloomberg. During the next 35 minutes or so, we're going to be chatting with some of Amani's most trusted staff members, and together we're going to learn more about the mission we are all working on so hard to help them accomplish the important work that needs to be done. I have had the privilege of working with Amani for the past 10 years. I was a full-time anchor at BNN Bloomberg when I was asked 10 years ago to host a fundraising event in Toronto by Dan Richards, and I'm happy to say I've been working with Amani ever since. It's been my pleasure, and I've also witnessed the impact of what the team has done, the Amani team has done on the ground, and also witness the impact of your contributions, which has helped them do the work that they've done. As we speak today, there are more than 30,000 street children in Tanzania alone, and thousands more throughout Africa, as we know, in the world. The reasons the children go to the streets are unique to their individual situations, family hardship, neglect. It's very hard in terms of some of the situations they've been going through. But what we do know to be true is that with proper care, resources, and a little bit of love mixed in between, these children can thrive, they can succeed and do amazing things, lead healthy and productive lives. And this is why the work that Amani does is so vital, and that your support of that work is so vital as well. A few housekeeping items just before we get started. Please know, you may have heard, we're going to be recording today's session, so we can share it with those who are unable to join us live today. If you have any questions during the program, you can use the chat feature in the Zoom webinar. We're going to do our best to try and incorporate as many questions as possible as we can with the program and the Q&A session that's coming up. And that, of course, is going to be with Minder Chap, Amani's Executive Director. And that'll be hosted just at the end of this, the official broadcast. We'll get to the question and answer session right after that. And if you are moved in this conversation to make a difference, and you can see the impact of your giving and you want to do more, please feel free to do so at amanikids.org. We will include the link in the chat that you can do that right away. Before we start, though, let's kick things off with a video about our dear friend, Irene.
Hi, I'm here today to share with you a story about our little friend Irene at Amani Centre. Irene lived on the streets of Arusha with her mother for the longest time after their house was washed away by floods and her father left them. Leaving them behind with nothing and also homeless, they were forced to beg and live and sleep on the streets. From a very young age, Irene was exposed to very dangerous situations as her and her mother roamed the streets, begging to survive and living in abandoned houses, bus stations, and verandas. While they were beggars, Irene's mother was a commercial sex worker by night. This posed a serious danger to a girl her age, but also not just her, but also her mother. Due to the nature of her work, Irene's mother often roamed around together with her child at night. And one of these nights, on the town, they were met by one of our street champions in Arusha, and they were convinced to come with him to the Amani Arusha Centre. On their arrival, they were given a place to rest their heads and some food right before our coordinator asked the ward officer to escort Irene's mother and leave Irene behind. Irene's mother was rehabilitated for a period of 2 weeks, and during this time, she was required to report at the centre every single day. And at the end of the period, she was given a certain amount of money to start a new life and leave behind begging on the streets and commercial sex work. Irene stayed at the safe house in Arusha for a period of 23 days before she was relocated to the center in Moshi. On her arrival at the Amani Centre in Moshi, Irene was enrolled in the double speed in-house program to help her catch up with her education. On top of that, she was offered psychosocial support to help her undo all the trauma that she had faced while she was in the streets with her mother. Irene is currently developing well here at Amani Centre in Moshi, living a much happier and healthier life. She loves to play with her friends, she likes running and loves the game of tennis. Our social workers are constantly cooperating with the ward officers to help and find Irene's father and establish a more supportive atmosphere to resettle Irene back into her community as well as school.
What a fantastic story about Irene and her mom. And I think it really shows you on the ground all the support that Amani provides, a safe place for the child, support for the parent and family, education, and then working towards unification, because really that is the end goal for much of what Amani is trying to do. Now, you may have noticed as well that was Janet Agaba, that is Amani's newly hired communications manager. Janet, it was great to hear from you to help tell those stories. It's so important, and we really look forward to hearing some more of those great stories ahead. Speaking of great stories, let's bring in one of the men who has been living and breathing for these children and considers many of them his own. I've had the pleasure of talking with Mindart over many, many years now. Mindart, it's good to see you, and thanks so much for making the time today. It's an important conversation.
Hi, Kim, and hi, everyone. Great to be here and great to see that we have so many friends join in and listen.
Well, we're going to be, as I said, I want to let people know, and I'll highlight this throughout the next few minutes, that there's going to be a chance for them to ask you questions directly. But I know there's some questions everybody has, so let's start with those. The last time that you and I spoke was we were celebrating 20 years with Amani, which was a great accomplishment. But maybe take us through what has been some of the bigger milestones that have happened throughout the last year.
I'd love to. And yes, 20 years, really special. I think we're still having the energy of the celebration last year in October. And I also want to say, I mean, this is all about an update of Amani's work, but also about celebrating all of you, because those 20 years were possible because you helped us do this work. So what has happened in the last 1 year? Maybe a couple of things to share. Obviously, we had the crazy COVID situation, but one of the things that I'm really proud of, and I think we all are in Amani, is how we were able to start a new safe house for children rescued from severe abuse in Arusha in 2019. And despite COVID, we're able to really run that very powerfully. And it's a first place in the country that specifically rescues children from abuse and helps them towards a positive path. And you have to think about children like a girl who is maybe 14 years old and was married off to a 60-year-old man in her tribe, then ran away and ultimately ended up in the safe house. Or a girl who the parents just couldn't manage, didn't have the opportunity to send her to school, had not even the money to feed the family, and then the girl was sort of sold into domestic slavery. Or girls and also boys rescued from severe sexual abuse. So I'm really proud that over the past 2 years, already more than 200 children have benefited from that safe house, came from horrendous circumstances, but really are on a positive track again. So yeah, that's definitely one that we are proud of. The other one, and I'll share a little bit more about one example later, is that now that Amani is in its 20th or 21st year, we had 4 university graduates. So all boys or young men now who used to live on the streets, some of them for years, and who now got a bachelor's degree in public relations and marketing or in finance and accounting. So to be able to see that type of success, from street to success, as we say, is amazing. And maybe a last thing to share is, yes, Amani is all about helping these children. But now that we have reached 20 plus years, we also want to become a bigger player in influencing policies and trying to change the system. And one of the things that we worked hard at and succeeded is that Amani was selected to give a video statement to the United Nations end of last year on the progress on children's rights in Tanzania, which I think, of course, you never know how much of an effect that will have. But it's an important step, and it's showing the credibility that Amani has built over those years.
That's incredible. I mean, when you think about kind of like the work that's being done, what I love about this is you're kind of showing all parts of it, right? All parts of the system in terms of how Amani is influencing everything. And, you know, it should note, I mean, this in itself will be an amazing accomplishment, Minder, but you did it during COVID. So how is Amani, you know, weathered the pandemic?
We've come through it, and I have to again commend everyone internationally, because I really believe we've come through it because we were one international Amani family. So many people stepped up, put in extra effort, helped us keep at least part of our finances okay, our fundraising okay. But it has been challenging. It's been a difficult time, especially for many of our staff, because we work with street kids, and if you want to rescue these kids, you have to go out into like the busiest areas of the city, the bus stand, the market area. So many people in Tanzania didn't take any precautions against COVID. So how do you do that? How do you manage to still rescue these kids under those circumstances? But I'm really proud of all the Amani staff, their courage, how they were ready to take certain risks, and how they continued to show their love for these children. But it has been challenging. We lost one board member to COVID. I know many of our staff, or several of our staff, lost a close family member to COVID. But altogether, I think we've done reasonably well. All our core programs continued, and we actually rescued more children than ever last year. So we rescued 190 children from the street and another 75 from severe abuse, which is probably about 25% more than we've had in years before.
That's incredible. And again, like I said, it's incredible to survive a pandemic. It's even more incredible to be able to do the work that you did and rescue more children. Where are you now with COVID challenges? I mean, I think there's kind of the immediate, we made it through, but I'm expecting there's longer term challenges that come with that as well.
That's true. And I think the biggest challenge has been in terms of the fundraising, and I think that's not unique to Amani. A lot of nonprofits have struggled because people couldn't run events, couldn't do a big Kilimanjaro climb to raise money for Amani. So I think many of you know that end of last year, we had to make a very difficult decision to reduce part of our staff and to downsize a bit of our work. But I think we're still going strong. We still have 3 locations in Tanzania. We have more than 75 staff. And we invested in building our communications and fundraising. You mentioned Janet, but later in the call, you also will see Megan and Mike, who are really helping to get the message out and to get more people to know about Amani. So I do think we're on the up. There is new energy, and I do hope that, yes, to start 2022 may be a transition year, but I do hope that we'll come out stronger than ever.
When you, and maybe just to bring us back to the why and the how that Amani works in the way that it does, and it does get the results with the 4 new graduates, which by the way is fantastic to see. Maybe you can tell us about, you know, a typical child journey, like what happens, and I know you talk about the 3 R's that are necessary. So maybe tell us just what they are and how they work.
Yeah, so we've sort of summarized what we do in those 3 R's. So one is obviously rescue. You have to go out into the streets and work with these children, build a relationship of trust, and then get them off the street. Once they're off the street, the R of rehabilitation will start, which is all about getting the street out of these kids and get health and happiness back in. and also get them to dream again about their future, and then get them into school so that they can hopefully achieve the dreams that they have. And then the third R is about reintegration. So Amani, as many of you know, we're not an orphanage. We're not a place that just takes in kids and keeps them there until they're 21. What we try to do is to rescue as many kids as possible and then help them reunite with family, because in the end, living with family is so important. And then we follow up and keep supporting those families and those children.
It is the most important thing, is giving them that network and that grounding in the family, and helping them reintegrate society, quite frankly, in terms that's so important. I know that, you know, part of, I think the 3 R's comes to life, I'd say, in a day in a life, which we're going to be showing shortly. I know we've got a video showing Daniel in terms of what the day looks like and how you actually bring all those things to life. So we'll get to that shortly. But I wouldn't mind even going back and maybe talking a bit about some of the alumni, because you know, it's you know, these are not quick processes. You know, these take years to kind of come through and help the children move through. But you're really seeing some amazing stories come out right now.
Well, that's true. And maybe one to share is one of those youths who just graduated with a bachelor degree in public relations and marketing, and who also now is a professional photographer. His name is Hatibu, and he was one of the 10 university students last year. A little bit about his background. So he, when he was very young, his parents separated. He was left to stay with his alcoholic dad. And basically that meant that at home, often there was no food, there was no money to even pay for the school costs. So even though Hatibu was dedicated to continue school, the teachers didn't always treat him very well, because the family didn't bring in the money that was required. So too often he was sent away from school again, then actually took the initiative to go and beg in the streets, as a 9 or 10-year-old in the streets, begging to get the money to continue his education. Like that, he managed to stay in school most of the time, but until one day his dad disappeared and just never came back again, which forced Hatibu at the age of 11 to live in the streets full time. Fortunately, we were able to rescue him. He came to Amani, flourished there, was a very fast learner. We managed to get him into secondary boarding school, did great there. And as I shared, he now went to university, got his bachelor degree, and while in university, he was smart enough to also connect with some top photographers in Dar es Salaam, where he was studying, to learn about photography. And he is one of the alumni now, a very recent one that we are really proud of, and is running his own photography business, which, and I love that name, he called Studio Miracle 360. And to me, that sort of captures his whole life. I mean, he went from misery to the streets, and then turned his life 360 degrees around. And that is a miracle that we were able to do that together, and that he was able to do that himself. So yeah, Studio Miracle 360, I think an amazing story.
It's an incredible story, and such a great example of just being in the right place at the right time to help children move forward. You know, and the infrastructure that needs to be there. Now, he's not the only entrepreneur. I know you've got some other great stories to share too of another entrepreneur.
Yes, well, very briefly about a boy called Sawadi. Some of you may have heard of him before. And life doesn't always go as you plan. So he was on the street as a very young child, pretty much attached to the street. Then ultimately we were able to rescue him. And what managed to keep him off the street is that at Amani at that time, we had a very active acrobatic jump rope team. So not like girly jump rope as we all know it, but mixing acrobatics with the most amazing speed jump rope skills. He actually even went to the US for the World Championship and came back with some medals, and then taught a lot of our kids when he was in secondary school. But yes, life doesn't always go as planned. So we, together with him, made sure that he could train as a chef, of which he was really proud. He even wore like a spoon on his necklace to show the pride of being a chef. But then under COVID, so many restaurants closed down and he lost his job. But I think that's where his street smartness came in, because he did what probably was the smartest move at that time. He was able to start his own liquid soap business. So he managed to get liquid soap into production, started selling it wherever he could, became the main supplier to Amani, to all our staff in those COVID years, and did amazingly well. So I don't know how long he will continue the soap business, because at some point I think the demand will go down. But it's another boy or young man now who used to be on the street and who has now been able, with our support and your support, to channel those strengths into being an amazing business guy.
It's an amazing story. Just the resourcefulness is incredible. And it's like, if you can just imagine, you know, and everyone knows this who's listening too, that the resourcefulness that is needed to survive on the streets, if you're able to solve for some of that and let them turn that ingenuity and resourcefulness to other places, I mean, it's incredible to hear what they're absolutely up to. Minder, for those that are listening, in terms of the donors that are listening, and again, we have an incredible family of donors who are very supportive and want to do more. What do you want to say to them?
Well, I think one of the key things is I so appreciate, and I think that's not only me, I think that's everyone in Amani, this one international family that we are. And some of you I know have been with us for many years. You're like the grandparents of Amani, the babus or the bibis. Some of you recently joined and learned about Amani. But I really hope that all of you can feel how important you are, and that you can feel the love of these amazing kids. I actually shared when I was traveling in the last couple of weeks. I hadn't traveled for so long because of COVID. And then I was about to go, and so many of the children came to me and said, "Oh, Meindert, you're going to meet our friends in Toronto or in the UK or in the US. Please say hi and say thanks on behalf of us to them." So don't underestimate how important you are, because you make all of this possible. And I can only promise that as Amani, we will continue to do everything to help these kids.
Really, yeah, the donors, but I mean also the staff, of course, make everything possible, and we appreciate the thank you, but we appreciate more what you're doing for them. What's ahead in 2022? What do you want to focus on?
Well, I mean, obviously after the whole COVID reality, including the challenges on our fundraising, a lot of it will be about stabilizing and rebuilding. So we're not planning on all sorts of fancy new projects, though we will restart the Amani Farm, which is an amazing project that we used to have but closed for COVID. And we also want to get better at working with girls who are like 14, 15, 16, who are street involved, maybe not living there full time, but who have started to sell their bodies to survive or to make money for their boyfriend pimp. That's difficult, but it's one of the areas that we really want to get better at and do a much more powerful job in. And 2022 will also be the year in which, as board and as management, we want to do strategic planning for the next 7 years. So it's a bit of a transition year. One of the things that I am really excited about is that we are also looking into, now that Amani has had 20 years of experience, which is pretty rare for street children organizations in the South, can we somehow capture all the best practices that we've learned over these years, document those, and then start sharing them with many more organizations worldwide. And that's something that I'm hoping that we really can start doing, and that you probably will hear much more about going forward.
And how can people help best in terms of who are listening with you, with in terms helping the 14 to 15-year-old girls and helping the larger vision, I think, of getting this to move forward?
Well, so maybe three things. One is, because you specifically mentioned those girls in commercial sex work, we actually got a 50% grant just recently in Toronto to cover that new program. And we're still looking for the other 50%. So we're looking for another probably $15,000 per year for 3 years to really get that program going. But for many of the others, I would say, please continue spreading the word about Amani. I know so many of you have been really strong supporters of Amani for many years. Try to see whether you can build that network, reach out maybe to your family or to your friends, talk about Amani. If possible, get your church involved or your company or your children's school, because we really need more people to know about the important work that we are doing. And one of the best ways to give, and especially if you're not exceptionally wealthy, but you just want to give a smaller amount, is to do that through monthly giving, because that's unrestricted. It allows us to know that we have that money, but then be flexible on how we use it best. And I think I can honestly say that you know by now that any dollar you give us, we will do everything we can with that to benefit as many kids as possible. So yeah, monthly giving, maybe someone who is interested in working with those girls in commercial sex work, and just spread the word. Go out to your family, your friends, your networks, to hopefully get many more people engaged with Amani.
Yeah, and then we get to see and hear more of the great results that come out of it with all the what you've been telling us today. Minder, thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to let you know, I know there's lots of questions coming in the chat. I can see, but I know we're holding the questions until the question and answer period that is coming up. And I know you're going to be with that. Mike and Megan will help with that. So Minder, thank you. And we'll be talking to you again shortly, very shortly, I think. Minder did talk a bit about just the 3 R's with Amani in terms of how the process by which children are, brought in, helped, and hopefully reintegrated back into families and society. But it really comes down to what happens day to day. So with that, let's hear from Daniel. He's a team member in Tanzania about what Amani kids do on a daily basis.
Hi, greetings from Amani Centre, Moshi, Tanzania. I am here to tell you about the day at Amani. In the morning, they have the chit-chat with the caregivers while their breakfast is being prepared, also for morning classes at the center until 10:50 when they break for tea. The children go back to class until 1:20 when they come out for lunch and a long break. After lunch hours, they again go back to class until 3:30 when they come outside and it's time for them to play some games. At 4:30 they gather themselves with the social workers for closing of the day. After that, then the night caregivers are taking over for dinner and the preparation for sleeping in the night. I'm glad that I got the opportunity of working with Amani, helping these vulnerable children.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for showing us a little window into what happens day to day. It's incredible to see, and it's also worth noting that our the efforts on the ground, of course, and Minder talked about this, are are 20 years now in the making, and it has taken an international effort of all of those of you who are watching right now, with Friends of Amani organizations right across the world. To date, we have Friends of Amani chapters. They have been established in the United States, in Canada, United Kingdom, in Germany, Netherlands, and Australia. And the fundraising and awareness efforts are vital sustaining operations on the ground. So I'd like you to welcome, you can see in here, we have Francesco Rovetta. He's chair of the Friends of Amani US Board of Directors. And I think we have Cynthia Asio, who's joining us from Tanzania, a member of Board of Directors in Tanzania. Hello to you both. Thank you so much for coming here, and thank you for everything that you do, because I know you are very active behind the scenes. Francesco, I'd like to, if I could start with you, maybe tell us a bit more about what's happening from your perspective, your work that's happening in the US right now and how things are going.
Hey, Kim. Hello, everybody. Yes, it's really exciting right now for us here in the United States. First and foremost, I want to kick it off by saying that we got a lot of excitement in our team, our board members, for the year that ahead of us. We actually also recently added new members to the board, and we plan to continue doing so for the remainder of the year. Last year, we also were joined by the new Director of Development, Megan Wood, that will work with all our US supporters to stay in touch with all the incredible people that continue making an impact to the life of children in Tanzania. I also know that our fellow Friends of Amani in Canada hired a new Director of Development, Mike Crum, and together I think we have the muscle to do even more in the coming months and years. A great news from a group of loyal supporters from Florida last month, in March. They wrapped up their annual event, and once again they broke a record. So they raised over $160,000. Kudos, guys, thank you. And also we have a lot of activities and events planned for the rest of the year. You'll hear from us more in the coming weeks and months. And obviously, even if we are very far away, one ocean and 1.5 continents or so away, the impact we always have with our fundraising efforts is always so palpable. And I'm really excited to have you on our team and support you on an ongoing basis. And please know that our door is always open to you. Your suggestions, your idea, your feedback, your message of encouragement are more than welcome anytime. So please feel free to reach out to us anytime. And we'd love to get you involved in any forum that you'd like to. That's all from us. Thank you for having me, Kim. Over back to you.
Thank you, Francesco. And I'm going to say to the very hands-on group here, very passionate about what they do and very grateful for all the support that we're getting. And kudos to the folks in Florida. That's an amazing story. Cynthia, I'd like to turn it over to you. I know you're joining us from Tanzania today, representing Amani's local board of directors. Maybe tell us a bit more about your work and your involvement and what's happening right now.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you again for having me. And I do bring you greetings from my fellow board members in Tanzania. Kim, as you've heard earlier from Minded, there has been a lot going on the ground. As a board is to give management support to transition us to what we have coined as the COVID, in this post-COVID period, we've coined it as Amani 2.0. And as a board, we're really looking forward to what the future is going to be presented to us. As Amani, we hope and we're really praying that we can be creative in everything that we go through to continue with our mission. Thank you so much, Kim, for having us.
Thank you, Cynthia. I like the sound of Amani 2.0. Amani 1.0 was pretty fantastic. So I'm even more excited about what 2.0 will bring. There are so many ways, just to let people know, and Francesco alluded to this as well, of ways of getting involved with Amani. If you're interested in learning more about the Friends of Amani organization area, please reach out to info@amanikids.org. As we close out the program, I'm excited to share one more message for you from a donor in Canada who is challenging us all just to do a little bit more. So let's take a listen to Murray's story.
In 2011, I did a climb up Kilimanjaro and I visited Amani for the first time. I have been a monthly supporter ever since. Amani has become part of my family's life. My wife Ellen and I visited in 2014 on the occasion of our 40th wedding anniversary, and we brought the whole family to visit in 2019 at the opening of the Rescue Center in Arusha. I continue to be inspired by Amani's work and was especially moved by the 20th anniversary live stream last October. Based on that, Ellen and I have decided to increase our support to Amani by $500 a month. But we're only prepared to do that if others will consider increasing as well. So our additional givings will be to match the first 500 and increase monthly givings from existing supporters or new donors who sign up for monthly giving. Thanks to everyone at Amani. Keep up the great work.
Keep up the good work. I'll finish his last words there. Murray, thank you so much for that incredibly generous offer. And, you know, we're looking again, of course, for people who are inspired to match their monthly contributions. To join in becoming a monthly donor, you can visit amanikids.org. If you're already a monthly donor and would like to increase your giving level, you can contact info@amanikids.org. And a reminder, Murray will match any and all monthly gifts. So let's work together, try and help Amani to obtain the entire match amount. Now, as we round up this part of the program, I want to thank you again for joining us and remind you all the questions that I see in the right-hand side of my screen. We're teeing them up for the question and answer session with Minder in just a moment. But before we get to that and the details, it's important. I want us to hear one more thank you message from some of our fabulous kids at Amani. Wonderful to see their faces, and thank you for spending your time with us today, and also just thank you to them for being able to share how they're doing there at the same time. Now, you probably just saw two faces pop up on the screen. These are two of Amani's newest team members. I'd like to introduce you to Megan Wood and Mike Crum. Megan is Director of Development for Friends of Amani US, and Mike holds the same role for the Friends of Amani Canada. I assure you they're fantastic to work with behind the scenes. So I'm feeling very confident about the direction of things that are going. So Megan and Mike, I'm going to leave everything in your capable hands for people to get to know you and to get some questions, Q&A done with Mindert. Thank you all. Thank you for all that you do. And Megan and Mike, I turn it over to you.
Hey, Kim, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you do this. And I know there's a round of applause happening all across the world for you. So thank you for all that you do for Amani. So as Kim mentioned, my name is Megan Wood. I'm the Director of Development here for Friends of Amani US. I'm also joined by my counterpart up in Canada, Mike Crum. Mike, if you want to give a shout out. Minder,
yeah,
I think. Oh, great. So we had some really great questions. We're going to take the next 15 minutes or so for a question and answer session. So please feel free to continue to use the chat box. I'll be monitoring that as we're chatting here. But Minder, I think the biggest question from so many people out there are just loving these update stories. So if you want to share one or two more, I think that would be a great way to kick this off.
Actually, I might actually give an update that some people during my international travels have heard about, which is a girl called Vanessa. This is on the one hand a little bit of a sad story, but it's also a very powerful one. So I shared with people how just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Vanessa was in court testifying against her own dad. So she is a 12-year-old girl. About a year ago, her mom disappeared. So she stayed back in a little hut in the slums with her dad. Dad was a drunk and sort of forced Vanessa to be the mother of the household. So to cook, to clean, to do all the grocery shopping, to do basically everything, take care of the 2 little brothers. But unfortunately, Dad, when he would come home drunk at night, also forced Vanessa into his wife's role. So Vanessa, for many weeks, if not months, was sexually abused by her own dad. Fortunately, she was strong enough that after a while she opened up to someone in the slums, someone in the local government, and they took immediate action, rescued Vanessa, brought her to the Amani safe house, and the next day her dad was caught and put in jail. So yes, in the safe house, again, they are all pretty horrendous stories that these children have gone through, but at least in the safe house, they are safe. In the safe house, they can slowly work through all those traumas together with our psychological counselor, with our social workers, connect with the other children, and become children again. And in the first couple of weeks, that's what you saw happening with Vanessa. So when she came to Amani, she was almost aggressive. There was no one, no staff, no child who would come even close to her. But then a couple of weeks later, she was just a happy child again, obviously scarred, but interacting, playing with all the others, openly talking to our staff, including about everything that had happened. So yes, about 2 weeks ago, for the ones who wanted to know that update, Vanessa did go to court together with Amani social workers and counselor, and gave testimony there about everything that happened to her while her dad was sitting there. So immensely difficult, but she did a very confident job. And you could see how after that the whole burden was lifted off her shoulders. And she has now been reunited with a really good aunt who is also taking care of her 2 younger brothers. So she's building a positive future again. And I think that's what the safe house is all about. Rescuing these kids who come from horrendous circumstances, help them work through those traumas so that they can start being children again, and then put them on a positive track again. So that's one example of the so many kids that have been helped.
Such a beautiful story, Minder. And I think it really speaks to kind of the length that we go really to support these kids and to make sure that they are safe in so many ways. So we have a question more about kind of street children on the ground in Tanzania, and who's responsible for children on the streets? Is it the government? Is there any kind of system in place? And is the amount of children on the streets growing in Tanzania? Is it reducing? What's kind of the picture there?
Well, so maybe with the last question, it was reducing, partially because Amani and others, we were doing a powerful job and we had good collaborations with the government. So especially in the towns and cities that we were working, Arusha, Moshi and Singida, it was coming down until COVID hit. And then families were struggling more. Schools were closed for a couple of months. So that would drive a lot of new children to the street. So the numbers went up again quite drastically in 2020. That has stabilized and we are slowly getting those numbers down again. And yeah, whose responsibility is it? Too often, it is still, everyone sort of looks at Amani and other non-profit organizations to just solve it. One of the things that we are actually piloting, hopefully soon, is to build like a community of child rescuers, where yes, Amani staff are involved, but then also train local community members, as we call them, community champions, as well as local government on how we can collaborate best to rescue these kids. Because we want to turn that dynamic on its head. We don't want to be seen as, oh, you are the ones who have to solve the street children problem. We have to do it together, and we will be way more effective if we do it together. So that's definitely something that we will pilot in the next couple of years, and that hopefully can become the norm after some time.
Oh, really, really interesting, Minder. Thank you. You're so knowledgeable on this topic worldwide. It's really interesting to hear you talk about it. Going back to the COVID and the pandemic, you talked really well about kind of how Amani has weathered through the past 2 years. We did get a question about kind of the programs and maybe the support that we offer, how that has changed through the pandemic. Do we lose our ability to provide any support services? If you could touch upon that a little bit.
Well, so very little, though, yes, end of last year, we made the difficult decision to downsize a bit. And we tried to limit that as much as possible, which obviously will be a challenge for Amani and for all the staff who are still there. Because what we're trying to do now is to do sort of the same job, but with fewer people. So everyone will work 150% instead of 110. But one of the things that we did is we closed the farm for those 2 years, partially because it was too difficult to go there, partially because we wanted to cut at least some costs. And the other program that we've closed, at least for this year, is the youth transition houses, which was a project where we offered like a 1-year apprenticeship as well as independent living training to older former street youth who couldn't go back to family, but who had to transition to independent life. So we did close that program. We are looking at whether we will either restart that in 2023 or whether we will use that same compound, maybe for girls and possibly even for that girls project of the girls who are engaged in commercial sex work.
Fantastic. I as someone who's newly working with you, I mean, I laugh when you say people doing 150% because it feels like you're doing 400% all the time, which is a good thing. That's a compliment. You really work hard for this organization and the kids that we serve. Another pandemic related question, with the increase of costs and inflation, is that impacting Amani's operational costs? Have you felt kind of the burden of that thus far?
Sorry, I missed the first part. With the recent developments in the Ukraine, is that the question?
No, not with the Ukraine. It could be kind of just worldwide, everything that's happening and the inflation at a height now. Are we seeing an increase in operational costs happening on the ground, and how are we going to face that?
Yeah, we are. I actually got quite a strong message from our children's home coordinator a couple of weeks ago saying things are going crazy in the market. A lot of items are not available anymore. A lot of items cost double or at least 50% more than they used to. What are we going to do? Are we going to buy all that stuff in bulk so that at least the next 3-4 months we can provide for the children that we host? And we're still, we did some first steps, but we're still debating what is smart. But obviously, when it comes to the essentials, when it comes to basic food, some clothes, at least some toiletries, etc., we need to be able to provide that. So even if it is at high cost, we will buy that, and we will buy that in bulk. But it is a challenge. Yeah, we finally conquered COVID. And now we get this crazy inflation and just a lot of items not even being available anymore.
Right, absolutely. If anyone can take on a challenge, it's this group. So we'll hit it head on here. Another great question, multiple questions about this. When can volunteers start coming back to Amani? What are the protocols? How do people, say they're interested and get over to Amani on the ground? Well,
so the detailed answer should come probably from my colleague Salma, who is running that program, and she can be reached at salma@amanikids or volunteer at amanikids.org. But yes, we are welcoming volunteers again for 2 different programs, either to have an in-depth experience at Amani for, let's say, a couple of days, and then we call you an Amani ambassador and you just join and see the work in depth, go to the streets, maybe go into the slum, cook food for the children, things like that. Or for a program in which we will really select volunteers that can benefit the organization. And then you can come for anywhere between 3-4 months, up to some people, even 1.5 years.
Fantastic. It's great to hear that volunteers continue to be welcome, and certainly our doors are always open. Minder, before we wrap up, any other final words, last stories that come to mind, anything you want to leave our supporters with?
Well, so I'm just really grateful that we have come through this together. And I can see that that is true for everyone in Amani. When I speak to the colleagues in Amani, yes, those were hard years, and yes, they struggled also financially. But the ones that are there and that are continuing are so appreciative of everyone in this international family. So just a huge thanks on behalf of all the Amani staff and of course all the Amani children.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Minder, for your time. Thanks again to our donors and supporters tuning in today, and those of you who will watch this at a later time. We cannot do this work without you. We're so grateful. There's a lot of exciting things coming up for Amani. We have some great collaboration between our Friends of Amani organizations throughout the world, and we're really looking forward to giving you all the opportunity to continue to see the power of your contributions. Again, we're accepting donations, of course, at any time. Monthly contributions are a great way to give. AmaniKids.org is the website. And with that, we will see you soon.